Afternoon, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. This week we'll be taking a short break from Ezekiel, our ongoing study of Ezekiel. I've had I've had a little bit of a bump in the road, if you will, a little pothole I need to clear up. So, in this ongoing study, it seemed to be I ran across something. I ran across something in there, and it was a bit more involved than I'd realized. So I thought I'd just this week I'd give us a break from Ezekiel, and we'll go into something else. How's that? And of course, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about apostates, right? I mean, give us a break on something else, right? And actually, apostates. The scriptures speak quite a bit amongst apostates, and let me pull up a definition. I meant to print one up, and I apostates, and I didn't say postman. I said apostates. Stupid phone. In any case, it's apostates. And very quickly, what is an apostate? Well, I'm glad you asked. Because apostates, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is a person who renounces a religious or political belief or principle. Again, is a person who renounces a religious or political belief or principle. And this seems to be this. It's not relegated to individuals. It can be collections of people as well, and because the whole institutions can do this. And we may run across a little bit of this in our study today. I think some of you already know what I'm referencing to, particularly in a couple of letters of the churches in Revelation. David shaking his head. See, we think alike too much. And there's often spoken of in symbols or types. Now, anybody, just a refresher, a little bit of a pop quiz. What is a symbol or a type? Anybody? Anybody? A type is a symbol of. It basically means when we say types, it means symbolism. It's for symbols, and it's to give us something that we can relate to on a physical level, that our flesh can accommodate, that our fleshly minds can wrap itself around, something we can understand. Q.
I just thought I'll look up the definition of symbol. It's just a mark or character used as a conventional representation of object, function, or process.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now, if you think of any symbols of types or symbols of apostates, get your hand up. We'll call on you, but we'll be the same drill as always. What we do ask here is keep your questions on topic. That's all we have. Keep all questions and topics. Keep all questions and comments on topic.
What was your question again?
I didn't hear you, Q. What?
What was your question again?
I said just keep all questions and comments on topic. That's all we ask here. Because what we're doing today it's more of a study than a true sermon. David.
So when we talk about apostates, we look at it from a lens of those that are in the faith that actually leave the faith.
Yes.
Meaning that you believe in Yahweh, you believe in the commandments, you believe in Scripture, but something causes you to fall away. And we know Scripture talks about falling away. But in actuality, most people in this room are apostate because we left some religion that we were a part of to actually come to the truth.
In a matter of speaking, we did.
And so by definition, if you left the Catholic Church, you left the Baptist Church, you left Methodist, you were apostate of that religion coming to the truth, which is in Messiah.
Yes, I left the Catholic Church behind to come here. In favor of the truth of Yahweh.
There's a good apostate and there's a bad apostate.
Oh, good ones. So they might not all be bad then. Imagine that, David. I got a few, but if you got any thoughts, any ideas, feel free to get your hand up. We'll call on you. Nope. Symbol number 1. These are in no special order, by the way. It's just in the order in which they occurred to me, if you will. Brute beast. Brute beasts are dumb animals, if you will. Because let's think of this. What do dumb animals do? They do what dumb animals do, right? And it's not always in ways that we have any ways of wrapping our brains around. We don't understand why cats knock stuff off the ledge, on a counter or a table. They have to knock everything over. Why do dogs dig holes? That's a mystery. Been going around for years. Why do chickens cross roads? You had your hand up, Larry?
Yeah. So I do my progressive Bible study, and I started in Isaiah today, and I really appreciate, since you just brought up brute beast in Isaiah chapter 1, it says in verse 2 of chapter 1, "Hear, O heavens, and listen, O earth, for Yahweh has spoken. I have enlarged and brought up sons, but they have rebelled against me. The ox knows its owner, the donkey his master's manager. But Israel does not know. My people have not understood." So here Yahweh was actually comparing his people to an ox and a donkey. At least the ox and a donkey knows who its owners are.
Mm-hmm.
But Israel fell short. And in fact, later in the verses here, it says in verse 9, "Except Yahweh of hosts had left a remnant for us, a few, we would be as Sodom and we would be as Gomorrah. Hear the words of Yahweh, rulers of Sodom. Listen to the Torah of our Elohim, people of Gomorrah." And so these people had abandoned true worship of Yahweh. And he was comparing them to Sodom and Gomorrah.
That's good, so I won't cover that one, but that's okay. That's okay. Because what we're going to see is these, when people leave the faith of Yahweh, they corrupt themselves. They corrupt themselves and they speak evil. After all, again, what do dumb animals do? Lions to kill to get food. Bulls, stud horses, etc. do what they do just naturally. Bulls will bust out of a pen. Stud horses have been known to jump out, especially during certain times of the year when they get stupid, especially around the time of the spring equinox. Because I had a friend of mine, very acquainted with horses. I learned a lot from him. He told me he thought it had to do with why they get stupid certain times of the year. 'Cause it has to do with around the springtime when the equinox occurs. It has to do with the angle of the sun coming down, hitting them in the eye, and it messes with their brains. Because they don't get quite that stupid other times of the year, but when the spring first sets in and the winter concludes, spring first sets in, I've seen this with my own eyes, and that really does happen. They get stupid and they get squealy for reasons elsewise defy explanation. Larry, you have your hand back up?
Yeah, and I was thinking about talking about apostasy, okay? And somebody made the comment a while ago that we're all apostates because we all left other religions. And there in Isaiah chapter 2, I really appreciated in verse 2, it says, "And it shall be in the last days that the mountain of the house of Yahweh shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and the nations shall flow into it. And many people shall go and say, Come, and let us go up to the mount of Yahweh, to the house of our Elohim of Jacob, and he will teach from his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion the truth will go forth, and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem." Well, folks, I believe we are living in the last days, okay? And when we see people leaving religion, there's going to be one of two things that happens, okay? Most people who leave religion, they abandon all commandments that they ever learned, whatever religion they came from. I've known people that's left certain religious organizations, and they become the most staunch atheists and agnostics that you would ever meet. But there are a few true-hearted people who latch on literally to the skirt of Yahweh, to go up to the mountain to learn of his ways. So, yeah, we may have left other religions, but we didn't leave Yahweh. We were drawn to Yahweh.
Okay, let's try. Well, since we don't have to go to Isaiah, but let's try 2 Peter 2, please. Let's see. Let's see what Peter has to say. In 2 Peter 2, verse 12. Second Peter 2, verse 12. This is Peter discussing false teachers and their depravity. "But these, like natural brute beasts, made to be caught and destroyed, speak evil of the things that they do not understand, and will utterly perish in their own corruption. And they will receive the wages of unrighteousness as those who count it pleasure to carouse in daytime, their spots and blemishes, carousing in their own deceptions while they feast with you. They have eyes full of adultery that cannot cease from sin, enticing unstable souls. They have a heart trained in covetous practices, and they are accursed children. They have forsaken the right way and gone astray." But we're going to talk about a few folks as we go along here. They have forsaken the right way and gone astray, following the way of Balaam, the son of Beor, who loved the wages of sin and unrighteousness. But he was rebuked for his iniquity. A dumb donkey speaking with a man's voice restrained the prophet's madness. So we had a brute beast being corrected by a brute beast in this account. Got donkeys doing what they do, and when Yahweh wills it, they can correct someone who is elsewise a brute beast. And brute beasts can take all sorts of forms. Oh, they can be dogs, for instance. Because what's one thing that dogs do? Especially when they cough up, so to speak. They'll vomit and they'll clean up their own vomit, but they'll lick it back up, right? They'll cough up what was making them sick and they'll lick it right back up. Anyone have any thought or question or comment? Any thoughts about what we just read here? We'll return back to Peter here in a bit, but in a different context. But we need to note something here. If we back up just a little bit, let's back up to verse 12 a moment. First, they speak evil. Back in verse 12, they speak evil of things they don't understand and will utterly perish in their own corruption. They speak evil of things they do not understand. Now, if they were an apostate, if they were in the true faith of Yahweh and leaving it for a false faith, wouldn't it be, if they're truly an apostate, wouldn't it be reasonable to surmise that they once had an understanding of these things? They loved and blessed things that they understood, but now they are no longer in the faith at all? I get no pleasure from this, but there used to be people here. They used to attend right here, where all of y'all are sitting. They had nothing to do with the faith anymore. And I don't mean people that life took them, physically removed them, took them far away. I don't mean that. I don't mean those people. Because a lot of those people are still in the faith, and they're watching us right now. We know a couple of them, like the Bradleys, who are watching us right now. They're over in East Texas somewhere. Life took them away, physically. But we'll see them but they're going to come see us at the feast. We had another family. Life took them far away. The De Felices. Life took them to Alabama. But they're still walking in the faith. So I don't mean those people. I'm talking about people who just quit and gave up altogether. Gone total agnostic, going back to where they came from. Like the dog cleaning up his own mess, so to speak. Robert.
Yes, and while describing the brute beast, in Psalm 73 we have a description of the contrast between the righteous and the nations.
Go ahead. Feel free.
But it's showing that the wicked live at ease, and the lack of understanding of the righteous. He describes himself as a brute beast. He's saying how the wicked live at ease and all these other things. And he said in verse 16 of Psalm 73, when I tried to understand this, it was too painful for me until I entered Yahweh's sanctuary and considered their latter end. In other words, he was jealous. He was upset, angry because the wicked were having an easy life. And so surely you set them in slippery places. You throw them down to destruction. But down to verse 21, for my soul was grieved, I was embittered in my heart. He says, I was so senseless and ignorant, I was a brute beast before you. So he's describing his response to his lack of understanding and knowing and understanding Yahweh's will. He described himself in Yahweh's sight as being a brute beast because he let these things get to him. So ignorance of Yahweh's will, not ignorance, but lack of understanding could make us appear like a brute beast because we act in kind, so to speak.
We don't think through.
Don't think.
Okay, Q's and David.
Just really fast. I find it's a little funny that when David had mentioned Boanerges, I actually was looking up the Greek concordances, and one of the translations, it came off in the Strong's Greek concordance. This is a little bit farther off, which was 903 Balaam. So 2 Peter chapter 2:15, and it says, which have forsaken the right way and are going astray, following the way of Balaam, the son of Bozer, who loved the wages of righteousness. The Strong Concordance 903 Balaam is actually, I'm gonna read it here, is a Mesopotamian symbolic of false teacher. So, according to what you're saying, the symbol of apostate.
Fits very well, doesn't it? David?
No, I was gonna kind of tag in on what Robert was saying. In situations to where you speak evil of Yahweh's word because you don't understand, there are certain situations to where people have an expectation of what they will get when they start the path of, following his word, reading and understanding, and when that expectation expectation is not fulfilled, they fall away because of their pride and their unwillingness to be patient. And it's almost like you have to have a humility that you can accept that you do things that you don't understand, and that's okay. And eventually it will be revealed. But those that can't accept the things that they don't understand, they open themselves up to 1 Timothy 4:1, and I don't know if you have that one or not, but it says the Spirit clearly says or states that in the latter times some will abandon the faith and follow deceiving spirits, the things taught by demons. It's almost like in their mind, their expectations, if it's not fulfilled, they go elsewhere to look for things that will fulfill it, when it's not the truth. And so we have to be cautious of our humility, and our patience allows us to understand. And if we don't have that, then we might get in a situation to where we don't like what we know or hear, and that is gonna block our understanding and cause us to fall away.
Okay, anyone else? So while we're still in Peter, it tells why these, it gives an explanation of why these false teachers do. They have eyes full of adultery that cannot cease from sin. So, question: does this adultery have to be literal? It has to be physical, or can it be spiritual? In this case, it seems to be spiritual, doesn't it? For the most part, the adultery in question. And they entice unstable souls. They've forsaken the right way and gone the way of the teaching of Balaam. Didn't the whole house of Israel do that following the days of Solomon? The whole house of Israel. When the kingdom was toward half, when Solomon's two sons ruled, one in the north, one in the south.
I don't think that was Solomon's son in the north. Are you talking about Jeroboam?
There's Jeroboam and Rehoboam. I get them. Sometimes I get them.
Rehoboam was the son.
Jeroboam was in the north.
Okay. Anyone else have any thoughts or ideas? David? Okay, David, then Larry.
Do you have 2 Peter 3:16 through 18?
2 Peter 3:16 through 18. I'll probably do somewhere. Let's see. As in all, okay, let's see. And also in all his epistles. Yeah, I'm gonna say, as in all his epistles, speaking in them these things, which some things are hard to understand, which Peter in reference to Paul, which some things are hard to understand, and unstable people twist to their own instructions as they do the rest of the scriptures. And you beloved, since you know all this beforehand, beware that you fall from your own steadfastness and being led away with the error of the wicked, but grow in the grace and knowledge of our Master and our Savior, Yahshua Messiah. And to him be the glory both now and forever. That's what that's what dumb beasts do. They just kind of wander about. Cows, horses unherded, they'll just go whatever direction, any way the wind blows. How about fruitless trees? Trees that bear no fruit. I seem to recall a few scriptures, a few times in Scripture, that we're taught to bear fruit, good and acceptable fruit. While we're way back in the end of the Bible, let's turn to Jude, please. I want to read Jude 12. We'll back up further momentarily, but while we're way here in the back, let's turn to Jude 12. Give their spots in your love feast while they feast with you without fear, serving only themselves. They are clouds without water, carried about by the winds. They're late autumn trees without fruit. So here we go. We got a few symbols in this short little passage. They're carried about by the winds, late autumn trees without fruit, twice dead, pulled up by the roots, raging waves of the sea, foaming up their own shame, wandering stars for whom was reserved the blackness of darkness forever. Jude mentions quite a few, and I picked up a few of these out of this little passage right here. But let's first things first. Let's discuss the fruitless trees. And let's do a contrast here, please. I want to read a couple of different passages of Scripture, and then we're going to... Because sometimes the best way to explain something is, in fact, with a contrast. So let's try Psalm 1, verse 3, and start there. Actually, I want to start in Psalm 1, verse 1. Let's get the first 3 verses. That's actually pretty short. Let's just read it all. Yeah, I know. Psalm 1, and it's only 6 verses. Let's just read it all. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the unrighteous, nor who stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of Yahweh, and in his law he meditates day and night. He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that brings forth its fruit in season, whose leaf shall not wither. And whatever he does shall prosper. But the unrighteous are not so. They are like chaff in the wind. They're like the chaff which the wind drives away. And they're the unrighteous who also not stand in judgment, nor sinners stand in the congregation of righteousness. For Yahweh knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the unrighteous shall surely perish. Now let's try Psalm 78, please. Psalm 78, and we're going to go to verses 29 through 30. Psalm 78, verses 29 through 30. He lets them fall in the midst of their camp, around all their... As them fall in the midst of camps, around all their dwellings. So they ate, and they were filled, and he gave them their own desire. They were not deprived of their craving, but while the food was still in their mouths, the wrath of Elohim came against them, and he slew the stoutest of them, and struck down the choice men of Israel. In spite of this, they still sinned. They still did not believe in his wondrous works. Therefore, their days are consumed in their futility, and their years consumed in fear. Compare the stability and the fruitfulness of someone who's referred to as a good fruitful tree versus someone who is not. They're not stable. They're pulled up, like Jude said. Because if a tree is dead, what's it good for? If you cut firewood, maybe. You can cut it down and use it for firewood. Bob does that. He uses dead trees on his place for firewood. Anyone have any other thought or question? Any comment? Okay, Larry?
There's a second type of apostate we need to consider, okay? We talked about apostates, people that just leave. okay? And they turn away and start doing evil, okay? But there are also those could be considered to be apostates that never leave. Because there in the first chapter of Isaiah and verse 11,
Right.
it says, "What good to me are your many sacrifices, saying Yahweh? I am full with burnt offerings of rams, and the fat of fattened cattle, and the blood of bulls, nor do I delight in the blood of lambs and the he-goats. When you come to see my face, who has required this at your hand, to trample my court? Do not add to bringing vain sacrifices. Its increase is an abomination to me. The new moons and the Sabbath and the going to meetings, I cannot endure the evil assembly. My soul hates your new moons and your appointed feasts. They are a burden to me, and I am disgusted at bearing them. And when you spread out your hands, I will hide my eyes from you. Yea, when you multiply prayer, I will not hear. Your hands are full of blood." So here in the nation of Israel, they said, we're in a covenant relationship with Yahweh. But in truth, they were practicing evil, because in chapter 2, it was talking about they had forsaken their fulfillment of what Jacob had been promised. They turned to fortune tellers, and they were full of idols. They were doing all these things, and yet they were still saying, we're serving Yahweh. And he was disgusted with their two-faced way of worship, because they weren't truly following Yahweh, but they were pretending to sacrifice and do all this for Yahweh's name, but then they were full of blood and being guilty of doing all these other things.
Yeah, we read that all through the prophets. We read quite a bit of that in our ongoing study in Jeremiah. We also read these folks in the letters of Revelation. I think they're called the synagogue of Satan. Scribes and Pharisees were like that. Joshua referred to it in John 10. Joshua calls them out on it. They're pretending to be leading the people unto Yahweh, but he makes it clear that no, it's Satan is your father. Because you do and say the things that you have seen and heard with him, with your father, the devil. Makes you wonder what was going on behind closed doors, doesn't it? Well, you know something was going on behind closed doors in any case. But Larry, what you just brought up is also giving a little extra clarification in Malachi 2, in the discussion of corrupt priests. Because what good are fruitless trees? Fruitless trees were designed and created to produce what? Fruit, to give us food. Apples, oranges, figs, grapes. You name it. But fruitless trees provide no fruit. Now, he's not talking. Now, we have to remember, this is not a reference to trees that were not created, that were created to not bring food. We got trees that were created, but they have no purpose to bring food. They have other purposes as well. They provide good shade, amongst other reasons. We're surrounded by good trees that provide good shade. And other reasons, homes for the birds. But he's not talking about those trees. Jude and others are referring to those that are supposed to bear fruit and do not. Anyone else have any question or comment before we go on to waterless clouds like Jude spoke of? He also spoke of the waterless clouds. Now, we hadn't had a problem with waterless clouds around here recently. Yeah, we hadn't had much. We've gotten quite a bit of rain to the point of, we've gotten it to the point of some flooding. We've gotten lots of rain down here recently. Because back to Jude 12, it reads, "They are clouds without water," or waterless clouds, and they are carried about by the winds. Okay, so if they're just going around carrying about by the winds, what does that mean? Anyway, any thoughts, any ideas about what that might mean? They just go along any way the wind blows. They have no particular direction in which they're traveling. Kind of like our politicians today. You know, they just kind of go wherever the proverbial winds blow, whether it's right or not. We see that coming out of our state and national capitals all the time, don't we? Let's try Proverbs 25, verse 14. Maybe that'll help us clarify a few things. Proverbs 25, 14. Whoever falsely boasts of giving is like clouds and wind without rain. Well, it shows up a storm and all right, but they're still bringing no rain. Yes, Sandra.
Proverbs
25:14.
Thank you.
Yes, David.
I was gonna say, this particular proverb is more meaningful to those that are farmers,
Mm-hmm.
those that have a farm or, you know, have the duties of planting crop and raising crop. If it's clear outside, you know you can do all your work, so all of your equipment is out in the farm.
Out in the field, that's right.
But if there's clouds and wind, you expect rain, so you bring everything in and you stop work. And you don't do anything and you wait for the rain. But if there is no rain, you've basically done nothing.
Well, there's no basically to it. You have done nothing.
You've done all of that for nothing. And so our lives shouldn't be like that.
And you're starting from scratch.
Yeah, so you're starting over. So we shouldn't be in our walk doing things that will give us no fruit, will give us no results, that bring to naught. And so we have to watch out for being like people that are watching clouds and wind, but not producing any rain.
Hey, you brought all your animals in. You got your equipment put up, but you're starting from scratch because you were expecting a storm. It didn't happen. Yes, Robert.
Yes, in Scripture we know that rain is a blessing, and waterless clouds are without blessing. So, but in Deuteronomy it speaks of the rain, Yahweh rain, His doctrine being
It's like
poured out as
yeah.
rain. So these waterless clouds are people that are without truth or without true doctrine. That's how I would see that.
Yeah, they blow a lot. They blow a lot of wind, but for no reason. There's still no rain to water the ground, water the crops, water the ground, bring us water, refill our lakes and reservoirs and rivers. Anyone else? Okay, let's try Hosea 6, verse 4, please.
Hosea what?
6, verse 4. Hosea 6, verse 4. O Ephraim, what shall I do to you? O Judah, what shall I do to you as well? For your faithfulness is like a morning cloud, and like the early dew, it just goes away. Therefore I've hewn them by the prophets, and I have slain them by the words of my mouth. Your judgments are like that it goes forth. But I desire mercy and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of Yahweh more than the burnt offerings. And he goes on with more of what he has against Ephraim and Judah. But they're like morning clouds, and it's not a lasting rain. Any rain that produced from these clouds is just kind of that little mist that doesn't do anything, does it? Except get your car wet. And by the time the sun comes up, it goes away, and you don't even know it's rained, has it? We've seen dew like that before, hadn't we? Or a little mist like that. It might bring us a little break from the heat, but that's really about it. And there's a lesson in it, actually, that it might bring a little lesson from the heat, because it's a practice. Wouldn't that be a sometime symbolic of deception? Of a doctrine, perhaps? Possibly. Maybe. Let's try 2 Peter 2. Let's go back to 2 Peter 2:17. We read that a while ago, but it bears repeating. Second Peter 2:17. There are wells without water, and there are clouds carried by a tempest, for whom is reserved the blackness of darkness forever. They're worthless clouds. They don't do anything. They don't bring that timely rain we need. But they can they can cause great storms and cause damage, though, can't they? Sometimes. Because a lot of times these waterless clouds, they have a way of looking all real nice and pretty. They bring relief from the summer heat at times. And sometimes these clouds are what people sometimes like these clouds. What these people pretend to do, that they make others feel better at times, and a short break from the Texas summers. But without rain, they're of no real value. They got this real nice white puffy, but there's no rain. They look pretty. Did I hear? I guess not. Because what else did Jude say about these clouds? Oh, not about these clouds, but about these apostates. He refers to them next as wandering stars. And what do wandering stars do? They look pretty at night, don't they? When we can see how they shoot across the sky, but they just kind of fizz out and go into darkness, oblivion. But isn't that what they're, as a symbol of an apostate, is that not what their course is? If we follow after them, to go into blackness, go into that darkness from which there's no way out? Let's try Revelation 8, please. Keep your place in Jude, but let's turn to Revelation 8. Verses 10 and 11. Then the third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, like a burning torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers, on the springs of water. And the name of the star is wormwood. A third of the stars became wormwood, and many men died from the water because it was made bitter or poisoned. These comets are oftentimes rendered as or wandering stars. Sometimes, yeah, they're real nice to look at. But they either just kind of burn and fizzle out into nothing, or what else can they do? They can cause great damage, particularly the ones that hit the earth. Particularly the ones that like we read of in Revelation 1 later, that it's going to plunge into the oceans and sink a third of the ships, it says? Turn all the water into wormwood, like we just read here? Or the name of the stars of wormwood? Fell on a third of the rivers and the springs of water. It poisons the water. Can we do a brief contrast here? Let us do a brief contrast at this point, and we will go to Psalm 110. And I wrote this down wrong. Okay. Let me try another one. I'm thinking I want to go back to Isaiah. And I have it back in verse 12. Let's try Isaiah 12 as a contrast. Isaiah 12. I'm going to read all of it. It's only 6 verses. And that day you will say, Yahweh, I will praise you. You were angry with me, and your anger turned away and you comforted me. Behold, Elohim is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. For Yahweh is my strength and song. He has become my salvation. Verse 3 is kind of important here. Therefore, with joy you will draw with water from the wells of salvation. That day you will say, praise Yahweh, call upon his name. Make his deeds amongst the peoples. Make mention that his name is exalted. Sing unto Yahweh, for he has done excellent things. And this is known in all the earth. Cry and shout out, O inhabitants of Zion, for great is the Holy One of Israel in your midst. Waters that were supposed to be good. See, when we follow Yahweh, the waters we get are good, fresh, and those good, refreshing waters of salvation. But here, all these wandering stars can do is corrupt everything they touch. They can turn elsewise good water into poison. They can deceive people into thinking, oh, look, see, here I'm bringing you this good. Using as falling stars and apostates, they can deceive people into thinking that the water they're drinking is good, clean, and pure, when in fact, spiritually, I'm speaking spiritually now, not physically, but spiritually, is in fact nothing but poison. And it's made the people ill before they can even realize it. Of course, that doesn't happen in today's landscape of today's churches, does it? I got a couple chuckles out of that one. No, these people are in fact masters of deception. Anyone have any question or comment? Okay, let's try. Got a little bit of time left. That's because Jude also brought up raging waves of the sea. Now, what did he say about raging waves of the sea in the 13th verse of his letter? Right? The apostates are like raging waves of the sea. They're foaming up their own shame. So they're foaming up their own shame, raging waves. Because what do raging waves do? They're not these nice little waves we see out in the Pacific, where people out in California go out and go surfing, right? And they're not the good surfing waves that we see out on the West Coast. No, I can't surf. I don't know. Never been surfing, I'll confess. Or these nice little friendly, nice little waves we see in the lakes and rivers sometimes. Well, let's. So, what exactly did Jude mean by these raging waves? Well, there's a few other scriptures that explain this, and Jude most likely presumed that his audience already understood this. Let's try Isaiah 57, please. Isaiah 57 and verse 20. Isaiah 57, verse 20. But the wicked are like the troubled sea, when it cannot rest, whose waters cast up mire and dirt. And there is no peace, says Yahweh, for the wicked. Well, we're given a little bit of an explanation here. They're like a troubled sea, and what do, they cast up mud, mire, and dirt. Now, after a good storm and it's a lake it's turned the water over, it's cast up a bunch of mud, mire, and dirt. What happens to the quality of the drinking water, or what's been known to happen to the quality of it? It's not. It can be difficult to drink. Sometimes it can be. We get warnings about the quality of the water. You can't go fishing in it, except maybe unless you want to hook into a catfish on the bottom. And no, we got heads shaking. No, nobody wants to go looking for a catfish. They're unclean. You don't want to go out in it, drinking or swim and play in it. Q, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I don't know if this may be just me where I'm making a connection with Revelations, the one that you just mentioned,
Okay.
as well as Isaiah 57:20. Shortly after reading the Strong Concordance, Greek Concordance of Balaam, 894 is absinthos. I don't know why I just decided to look up what it is. It's just of a certain derivation, wormwood as a type of bitterness slash calamity. And then when I looked it up, it says bitterness of spirit, deep resentment. And then shortly after, you just went to Isaiah 57, 20. But the wicked are like the troubled sea when it cannot rest, bitter spirit. And I just wanted to just throw that in there. That's what I'm like finding a correlation with Revelations and Isaiah.
Well, it means the people in question are unstable as well, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
You can't cross. It's hazardous to cross any body of water on a boat when it's unstable. You know, when the waves are going to and fro. Everybody wants calm, still waters, especially when you're going out fishing, right? Because little fishing boats don't handle harmful waves too well. They're not designed for that. So Isaiah does explain the foaming out. Let's try Jeremiah 5, please. Jeremiah 5, verses 22 and 23. Actually, can we back up to verse 20, please? This will help get us a little bit of context. Let's back up to verse 20. Get a little context here. Declare this in the house of Jacob and proclaim it in Judah, saying, hear this now, you foolish people without understanding, who have eyes and see not, and have ears who hear not. Do you not fear me, says Yahweh? Will you not tremble at my presence, who have placed the sand as the bound of the sea and a perpetual decree that it cannot pass beyond it? Yet through its waves tossed to and fro, yet they do not prevail. Though they roar, they cannot pass over it. But this people has a defiant and rebellious heart. They have revolted and they have rejected. because they do not say in their hearts, let us now fear Yahweh, who gives the rain, both the former and the latter, in its season, and he reserves for us the appointed weeks of the harvest. Your iniquities have turned these things away, and your sins have withheld good from you. These people are quite unstable. They're expecting Yahweh to bless them, give them all the blessings he promised while they still continue on in their rebellion. But that's contrary to the covenant they made in places like Leviticus 26, Deuteronomy 28, and others. Anybody have any question or comment? Yes, David.
You're gonna go to Ephesians 4:14.
Go ahead. While you're there, go ahead.
I'm not there. I was wondering if you're gonna go there.
Well, we can.
No.
Ephesians 4:14. Ephesians 4:14. And we should no longer be children tossed to and fro and carried about by every wind of doctrine, by every trickery of men, and the cunning craftiness of deceitful plotting. Yes. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, those that are tossed to and fro by wind or waves or whatever are considered children. Not only children in the faith and the doctrine, but, just like children, they believe what you tell them because they're relying on you as the authority. We shouldn't be children in the faith. We should rely on the authority of Yahweh only and not other doctrines that are out there. So let's not be tossed to and fro, unstable in our faith and belief.
We're supposed to be stable in our faith. Correct. Anyone else?
How Ephesians what?
Ephesians 4:14.
Thank you.
What we just read. Because I like to see it weigh against this as they pound the shore. These people fight against the ways and bounds of Yahweh. They will fight resistance. They'll fight him tooth and nail. And then they wonder why they don't get the blessings, why only bad things happen sometimes. And it kind of sort of back to dumb animals. How about hogs and dogs?
That rhymes.
Back to Kathy. Do you have a question?
I just said it rhymes.
Oh yeah, I rhymed.
Were you trying to rhyme?
Not really. No, that wasn't intentional. Because what hogs and dogs have similar characteristics. They go back from whence they came and been back to their original uncleanness. We read that in Peter 2:22, 2 Peter 2:22. Second Peter 2:22. Actually, I would like to back up just a little bit. Let's back up to verse 20. A little context, I think, is going to help us. Back up to verse 20. For if after they have escaped the pollution of the world through the knowledge of their Master and Savior Yahshua, they again entangle themselves in them and overcome, the latter end is worse for them than the beginning. For it would have been better for them not to have known the way of righteousness than having known it, to turn away from the holy commandment delivered unto them. But it has happened to them according to the true proverb, the dog returns to his own vomit, and the sow, having been washed, to her wallowing in the mire. Now, I don't know if anyone here has ever kept hogs before. I personally have not, but I used to have neighbors that did. And a pig pen is not a very clean place. It's nowhere you want to go. It's full of mud, mire, and, well, whatever exits a pig as well. But they love it. I don't know why they do, but they have it in them. They love it. They love playing in it, jump and wallowing in it. Pigs love it. I can't explain it. I've seen them do it growing up. Let's try Proverbs 26:11, please. Proverbs 26:11. As a dog returns to his own vomit, so does the fool repeat his folly. Dogs go back to their own vomit, and fools repeat their own folly. Now, surely we don't have any examples of fools, these apostates, of fools turning back to their own folly, do we? Well, I'm trying to think. How many times did the children of Israel sin in the presence of Yahweh during the time of the Exodus alone? And people died for it? And to the point they were told, no, you're not entering the land. I'm giving this land. Yahweh tells the children of Israel he'll give it to another generation. But you will die in this wilderness. How many cycles during the times of Judges do we see Israel falling into captivity, being relieved from an oppressor, back into oppression, up and down, up and down? A lot. And it was the same thing over and over again. So it's not just individuals, whole nations of people, whole groups of people can do this. It can be on scales large and small. Anyone have any question or comment they'd like to make, like to ask? We discussed this recently in Matthew 25. How about goats? Let's try Matthew 25, please. Because what is it about goats? What's the characteristic goats have? They're rebellious. They're stubborn. They're very strong-willed. They stink. Because we remember last time when I spoke on Ezekiel, remember how Esau's father, Jacob, recognized his son, thought he recognized his son, how Jacob deceived him. Jacob wore his son's goat skins. He recognized him by a smell. He stunk like a goat. Hugged him around his neck. I don't see you too well, son. The hands in your arms, they feel kind of like Esau, but you sound like Jacob to me. You sound like Jacob to me. So he came, now come here and hug me. He hugs him, he gets a whiff of his brother's animals. Daddy gets a whiff of the animal skins, and it would seem to be recognized by a smell. The smell. What's the first words out of his mouth after the hug? The smell of my son. Smelled like a goat. I just kind of found that strange. Matthew 25. Let's pick it up in verse 31, please. When the Son of Man, Matthew 25, picking up verse 31, when the Son of Man comes in his glory with all the holy angels around him, he will sit on the throne of his glory, and all the nations will be gathered together before him, and he will separate them one to another as a shepherd separates his sheep from his goats. Sets the sheep on the right, goats on the left. He receives, picking up in verse 33, on down through verse 40, he receives the sheep. Verse 41, then he will say to those on the left, that is, he goes, depart from me, you accursed, into the everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. I was hungry, you gave me no drink. And on down through the rest of the chapter, he spells out the rejection and the reason why, the rejection of the goats. Because we have to remember one thing, so a lot of y'all may not realize this, not having grown up on a farm, been around animals, but there's another difference between sheep and goats. Sheep are dumb, or at least considered very dumb. Now, if we're good sheep, we're not truly stupid. We are wise in the eyes of the Father, but in the eyes of the world, what are we? In the eyes of the world, we're a cast of fools, aren't we? According to mainstream churchianity or Christianity, if you will. However, goats are actually quite clever. Did you know that? Goats are clever. Sheep generally don't get out of their pens too well, unless you got to open a gate, and sometimes you even got to herd them out. You need a shepherd to watch over them. Takes them where you want them, need them to go. Goats, now they got their own leader. They'll listen to one head goat, one he goat, and they'll do his bidding. Now, whatever that means, they seem to understand it. The goats are very clever. They're not dumb like sheep. And of course, let's try tares. That's found in Matthew 13. Now, anybody, what is a tare? It's a weed. Tare, T-A-R-E, tare. It's a weed, but it's not the common weed we read about or you see in your lawn. Like some of us walk out in the morning and we see this big ugly weed that just sprouted up over there. I'm like, oh man. Or we're going to have to pick tomatoes and there's this huge ugly weed. Like, come on, man, what's all this? It doesn't mean the ugly weed we see in the middle of a lawn. That's easily identifiable. That's not what the tare is. Because let's back up Matthew 13. That will exemplify that. This is a parable. This is Joshua's parables. And let's pick it up in verse 24, shall we? Another parable he put forth for them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field, but while while his men slept. And his enemy came and sowed tares amongst the wheat, and they went his way. And when the grain sprouted and produced the crop, the tares also appeared. The servants of the owner came and said to him, "Sir, didn't we sow good seed out in your field? Then why do we have tares?" He said, "An enemy has done this." The servant said to him, "Well, do you want us then to go and gather them up?" He said, "No. While you gather up the tares, you also uproot the wheat as well. Let both grow together until the time of the harvest. And then at the time of the harvest, I will say to the reapers, first gather the tares and bind them into bundles and burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn." So the wheat is something desirable. It's to be gathered into the barn. It's to provide food. We turn it into bread. Turn it into, amongst other things, bread, my favorite cereal. Whatever else it is we do with wheat. We make goodies out of it. Whereas the tares, there's something about the tares that's different in this case. Remember, it's not the ugly yard weed. It is darnel. D-A-R-N-E-L, darnel. And what is it about the darnel? I wish I'd brought a picture. Wish I'd brought some type of photograph or printed image, but it resembles wheat. It resembles a good wheat, but it's not. It is in fact poison if you eat it, but it looks a lot like it. Now, what would be the point of this? Is there any symbolism in here? How about doctrine? Remember, didn't Joshua warn about the bread of the scribes and the Pharisees? And first he thought, well, and then they thought, I know, we'll figure this out ourselves. It's because we didn't bring any bread. No. He said, beware the leaven of the scribes of the Pharisees. Then he understood that he meant their doctrine. Because the darnel is poison. A few years ago, I don't know if they're still struggling with this or not, but out west, as you go up to the northwest, places like Utah, Montana, northern Wyoming, where they grow a lot of wheat. They had, and Washington, I believe, had the same problem. Probably spewed over into Canada, because I don't think that stuff recognizes borders. They had a problem with the darnel out west. And it was farmers were concerned it was going to get mixed into the food supply. Thank you, Q. To the food supply. And they had several universities, including Montana State University, which I learned about this through their website, actually. They were spending money looking into this problem, and there seems to be no problem on end with this darnel. But if you, and it looks just exactly, or not exactly, but a lot like real wheat. If you eat anything made of that stuff, it will poison you and it will kill you, just like false doctrine. If you ingest that stuff in, it will poison you. It will kill you. And you're sick before you even realize you're sick. And it's very difficult to, as in real life, once you're sick with that stuff, it's difficult to get rid of it, both spiritually and physically. Any question or comment? Because we've got about a minute left. Okay, Larry, make it quick. We got about a minute.
We can appreciate Joshua teaching us about the wheat, because we know shortly after his death there was a great apostasy set in, and it was held at bay by the remaining apostles. But after the apostles died off, beginning into the latter, the second and the third century, there were men that crept into the first century congregation that brought all these religious teachings and doctrines, and they started having councils and elders and things. And so it adopted a lot of things. They did away with a lot of things. They did away with the Sabbath. They did away with the holy days, and they adopted all these pagan religious rites from paganism. And so it's been a mushroom of things. So today we see what the result is.
And we also have Paul's warning to the Ephesian elders too, that such would rise up amongst them. Go ahead.
Are you gonna read Leviticus 26:14-15?
Go ahead, read it. If you're there, go ahead.
But if you do not obey me and do not do all these commands, and if you reject my laws, or if your being loathes my right rulings, so that you do not do all my commands but break my covenant, I will do this to you. And then it tells you all the curses.
Okay, well, thank you, Bob. Appreciate your input, and we're all out of time here, so what I'll do is we'll close here, and next week we'll have Tino up at 1 o'clock, followed by Johan, if I remember correctly. And Larry's going to lead us in some closing songs.